Are we ready to start?
Yep, go ahead and call the meeting to order, Chair.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the City of Milpitas Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Commission, May 21st, 2020. It is now 7:01 p.m. This commission's meeting will be held via teleconference. No physical meeting space. Submit any public forum or agenda item comments by 5 p.m., which Tony had published that on by email. So I think we are good to go. People can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and this is web streaming on www.ci.milpitas.cal.gov web streaming. Let's do roll call. I have to look at the list. Tony, would you help me out with the list of commissioners?
Yes, I can go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay, that would help. Thank you.
I can see Paul Ellis is here. Jonathan Nakapla'au is out this evening and he notified me in advance. Commissioner Clendenin, Commissioner Chair, Lynn. Alec Bittenkurt, he was going to join, but I have not seen him. Alec, are you on the call? Okay, I'm gonna write and put Alec out on absent. I see Joe Nichols. And then alternate Commissioner Vicki Young, who will be seated this evening.
Okay.
And then on behalf of city staff, we have Battalion Chief Maloon, Sergeant Speckenhoyer, Assistant City Manager Ashwini Kantak is actually joining us this evening. She wanted to be here for you guys if you had questions that represented, questions that were more city focused than they were emergency responder focused. Yes. And then I see also Captain Raj Maharaj. Otherwise, we have Milpitas IT joining us to take care of the logistics this evening. And Rochelle, it appears, is helping out as well as the host.
Great. Thank you. All right. Would you please join me in Pledge of Allegiance? You guys can see the flag, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag,
the
United States of
America,
and to the republic
which stands one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
With
with
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you so much. Approval of minutes. Did we have a chance to go over the minutes that Tony included in our email?
I did, and I'll make a motion to approve. This is Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Is that second? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'm sorry, who made the second?
That was me, Tony. Joe Nichols.
All right, minutes approved. Public forum. Members of the audience are invited to address the commission on any subject not on tonight's agenda. Speakers must state their name and address for the record and limit their remarks to 3 minutes. As an item not on the agenda, no response is required from city staff or the commission, and no action can be taken. However, the commission may instruct staff to place the item on the agenda for a future meeting. Moving on to announcements and correspondence. Do we have any announcements? Hi, Karina.
Hello, everybody.
Tony, let the record reflect that Councilmember Karina just arrived here.
The record's corrected.
Okay, thank you. If no announcements, we are moving on to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
This is Paul again. I'll motion to approve.
Second?
This is Commissioner Nichols. I'll second Paul's motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Agenda's approved. Okay, we are on to presentations.
Really quickly before we move on, we need to change a little bit of the format. Chair Lynn, I need you to actually call the roll by commissioner.
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to start now with all the commissioners or from now on?
So we'll need to go through the list of commissioners to hear their vote of approval to approve the agenda.
Oh, I see.
I can assist you with that if you'd like me to do the roll.
Sure, please.
Okay, Commissioner Nichols,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis,
Aye.
Commission Chair Lynn,
Aye.
Commissioner Clendenin,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
and I believe we have unanimous.
Yes. All right. For presentations, is that you, Tony?
I do not have any presentations on the schedule for this evening.
Okay. Does anyone else have any presentations to present? All right, seeing none, moving on to new business, and that's the MUSD update. And I'm glad Assistant City Manager is here because City of Milpitas with Milpitas Unified School District, we collaborate in a few things here. We organize lunch. We have Milpitas, MUSD, up to today, had served over 200,000 breakfasts and lunches to students. And with a joint effort between City and Milpitas Unified School District, Second Food Banks, with the volunteers, we are now serving food, drive-through, of course, the first Saturday and the third Saturday of the month, starting May 16 through August 1st. Correct me if I'm wrong, Assistant City Manager?
No, you're correct, Chair. And, we had our first one last Saturday and was basically ran out, did 600 grocery giveaways.
Yes. And yesterday I visited the Milpitas Food Pantry, spoke to Karen. She had a lot of stuff in her warehouse that she can help with the homeless or the needy families. So if we know of any family that's in need of grocery, please help them get to her. I think that's all I have to report for MUSD. me, we're moving on to, I believe this is you, Tony. Certain
Yes.
COVID-19. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so this evening I'll give you guys just a brief update with what's going on with the CERT members and our response to the COVID-19 event. On the city side, we felt it was in the best interest of our CERT members, and in addition to the fact that we wanted to observe the public health order, we didn't want CERT members exposed to the potential of the coronavirus. So we did not call them up to attend events out in the community on behalf of CERT. However, we are getting ready to partner with the state of California's Cal OES CERT program that they've started off, which is it's called a social bridging project. Many of you as CERT members may have already gotten the invite for this, but basically it's an opportunity to bring folks together who may be living alone in a vulnerable population, whether it be elderly or any other reason that they may be vulnerable, and connecting them with one another, with the CERT members over via phone, and they would be able to help provide assistance if the individual who's in isolation needs housing assistance, food assistance, medical care, checking in on them, and then it gives a CERT member the ability to connect them to the resource that they may need, in addition to just having someone to talk to as we're all through this isolated process. The other program that we're working on, which is a countywide program, and I actually didn't have this particular project agendized, but I am going to go over it real quick, is the contact tracing program. So the county right now is looking for volunteers that are willing to give a significant amount of time. They're looking for folks willing to commit 6 months to a year, working about 32 to 40 hours a week in assistance with the contact tracing program for when individuals come up testing positive, it can be traced back to cut off the impacts, or the spread, I should say, of the virus beyond that individual and who they've come into contact with. So if you do know folks that are interested, please put them in touch with me. I will get them in touch with the county and or the state program, depending on where their interest might lie. But at this time, no further information on that unless there's questions.
Okay. Now, if somebody's interested in that, Tony, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you? Just have them send you an email?
Yeah, email's usually the easiest, because oftentimes I'll get the phone call and I'm in something else, and the email kind of serves as my to-do list. I don't delete emails until I've taken care of them. So
Okay.
email would be great.
All right.
Tony, is this something that is also announced on Nextdoor, or is this something that is only going out to the people that signed up as volunteers for the city?
So the social bridging project is the state's CERT program that's running it. So that is exclusively to our CERT members. The contact tracing program has gone out on mass email, and I'm off the top of my head, I don't know that it's gone out on the social media platforms. I'll have to get back to you on that, but I do know it's gone out to the database that we carry within the city of individuals who individuals that are a part of our community and involved in our volunteer programs.
Tony?
Yes, go ahead.
So we also have included in our joint press release, which again, then we share through our social media sites with links to sign up. And we'll do that again this week as well.
Oh, perfect. So yes, good thing we have you on the call. You could answer that question for us. Yes, it has gone out then.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no more questions for Tony, I'd like to move up to public safety, police.
Good evening, Councilmember Dominguez, commissioners, and all city staff. My name is Raj Maharaj. I'm a captain over the police department, and I will provide you some feedback on the impacts of COVID-19 with the police department. So Tony was kind enough to give me like 5 areas to cover. So cases within our ranks, we've had 0 COVID-19 infections within the police department. Basically, we set up some parameters for employees come to work. We screen them on a daily basis. We've provided them with all the PPE equipment they need to be safe at work. So that's helped us keep those infections down to 0 within the police department. The other question was impact on delivery of services. we've actually had no impact of delivery. Our patrol staff continues to respond to calls for service. They're proactive and responding to community needs. We did close the police department lobby on March 13th. However, it's been reopened as of May 12th. But we have still continued to suspend our live scan fingerprinting, our citizen volunteer program, and our police explorer program. But again, our people are out there addressing crimes, addressing community needs, and trying to make sure we're visible within the community. The other question was the influence on crime rate. So we've been tracking our crime rate since the COVID-19 pandemic's hit, and we've had the shelter in place. And most of our crime rate has decreased across the board. The only thing that's has a little uptick is auto thefts, and it's up 131%. So basically, it's gone up 34 cases since the beginning of the year. So outside of that, our auto burglaries, our residential burglaries, commercial burglaries, robberies, domestic violence did show a slight uptick on the beginning of the shelter in place, but now it's flattened, and we're at a 0% change on domestic violence. And our DUI arrests are down 56% as well. So crime rate is down during the shelter in place. And again, our staff is out there addressing calls for service and any community needs. The next kind of bullet point Tony provided was lessons learned. I think one of the biggest lessons we learned was that we did not have a pandemic plan in place, which we do now. And we learned quickly that we had to have something in place to help protect our employees and citizens coming into the police department. That's one of the reasons why we closed the lobby. But since we've had that pandemic plan in place, we've been keeping up with our inventory on PPEs. So that is the biggest lesson we've learned. I think just having that in place. And now that we do, I think anything in the future, we've learned from this and we'll be a better agency moving forward as it comes to any other potential health issues that arise in the future. Hopefully nothing does, but we are prepared. Things that we would do differently based on the things we've seen since the shelter in place has gone into place. Probably have a little better inventory on hand. So we're not trying to purchase inventory and keep things in at levels where our employees aren't impacted. We have a good inventory of equipment, but maybe we have learned that maybe we need to have a little bit more in our inventory in the future so it does not have a negative impact on our staff and the community at all. So if there's any questions I can address regarding our impacts of COVID-19, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Captain, do you have any reportings of hate crimes during the COVID-19?
We have not had any reports of hate crimes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Question for you, Captain.
Yes,
In terms of testing for your department staff, what kind of what numbers have you been able to test, or has it been department-wide, or is it select individuals?
We are testing select individuals. If one of our employees has been in contact with someone that may have been diagnosed or show symptoms of COVID-19, then we're testing those employees. We're not allowing those employees to come back to work until their tests are completed and results are in. So we actually shelter them in a local hotel, keeping them away from their own families and our staff, keeping them safe until we figure out the results of their testing. So once they're tested and they're cleared, we bring them back to work, and then they're also allowed to go back home.
Okay. Follow-up question for that. When you do test, let's say you would have somebody, I know other departments in the Bay Area are requiring 2 negative tests prior to allowing that per individual coming back to work. Is that something your department's doing, or what's the SOP on that? Should somebody be potentially exposed?
We have not done a double negative test. No, we have not. So we're continuing just to have our employees evaluated. And again, they're being screened daily. So we take their temperature, we ask them some medical questions, And depending on their answers, if there's areas of concern, we will send them home. So I think we have a great plan in place that's keeping us healthy, which is a result that we have no infections within the police department with our professional staff and our sworn staff. So in my opinion, our measures in place are working at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions I could answer regarding the COVID-19?
No, that's great.
Thank you, Captain.
My pleasure.
Meeting requests.
I'm not sure what that item number B is regarding. Sergeant Speckenhoyer, are you on? Did you have that listed on our agenda for tonight?
I do. This is good evening, everybody. How are we doing this evening?
Good, thank you.
So the reason that this was brought up, the meeting request, is because this is still just on the verge of being approved, still in draft process. But the last time we met, and we met in person, which seems quite a while ago, we talked about grooming appearances for our officers and our staff. In the past, we talked about beards as well as tattoos. We have a preliminary policy that's coming up that we're going to be looking to approve. We wanted to obviously run it by you guys as well. But we're looking to approve tattoos for our dispatch staff as our kind of initial rollout. So the tattoos are not offensive. They're going to be, if they are visible, they have to be approved by the chief itself and in good taste. But these are kind of the first wave of the grooming standards we're looking at implementing to kind of catch up to more modern times within the Bay Area.
Good.
If there's any questions I can answer about it, I'd be more than happy to.
Joe, do you have a question or? Okay.
Not at this time. I think we kind of covered everything the last meeting.
All right. Then we shall move on to the license plates reader. Is that?
That's back to me.
Okay.
So I'm going to share a screen here. Just bear with me, please.
All right.
It says I cannot share a screen until someone allows me to. So
I believe IT has to change that.
there we go.
Hmm.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
All right. So tonight I wanted to discuss with you the police department's automated license plate reader program and policy. I hope to get some feedback on our policy and answer any questions you may have. The Milpitas Police Department is looking to add stationary, which I'm going to now start calling ALPRs, automated license plate readers, to our current mobile ALPR fleet. We have been using ALPRs on our vehicles for approximately 13 years. We have come to the commission for input and collaboration on ALPR policy and address any privacy concerns. Stationary LPRs will be very, very beneficial for residents of Milpitas, as it will offer the police department another tool to help solve crimes, impact criminal activity, reduce crime trends, and make our community safer. So what is an LPR? An ALPR is a system of cameras with supporting software and server engines that capture license plate information and instantly compares the license plate to DOJ databases of wanted criminals or persons of interest. ALPR cameras can scan thousands of license plates in the same amount of time it takes an actual person to scan a few. When a license plate image is compared against a list of wanted vehicles and matched through the DOJ database, then an alert is signaled and the screen shows the vehicle and the reason for the alert, such as a crime, missing person, or an ongoing investigation. ALPRs automatically provide the location, date, time, and photograph of the vehicle. The data is then uploaded to a server. ALPRs are small, easy to maneuver, and typically mounted on street poles, street lights, highway overpasses, trailers, and attached to our police cars. ALPRs are commonly used in both public and private sectors, including law enforcement agencies, HOAs, apartment complexes, gas stations, and parking management companies, for a few examples. So community benefits for ALPRs. So what we intend to use them for are Amber Alerts, missing persons, criminal warrants, persons of interest, vehicle thefts, crime trends, criminal investigations, and the modern day technology of ALPRs has actually really reduced costs. So stationary ALPRs will allow our officers and our dispatch staff to receive notifications of suspect vehicles entering a certain area of the city and provide officers the opportunity to capture criminals or deter criminal behavior before crimes are committed. As our officers receive these alerts in their vehicles, they can verify the information and take appropriate action, such as enforcement stop, contact the person, or they can access the secure database to help identify suspects. Stationary ALPRs will be another tool to assist our personnel in impacting criminal activity, reducing crime trends, and making Milpitas a safer community. Modern ALPR technology allows for systems to be run on solar power, electrical connection, and overall size allows them to be affixed to almost anywhere without excessive infrastructure costs. How will stationary ALPRs help police department benefit our community? Well, a lot of crimes are reported to us lack suspect information or investigative leads that reduce the probability in identifying a suspect. Many of these crimes involve the use of vehicles, and having stationary ALPRs in the area where crime trends spike will allow for future capture license plate data to assist investigations to identify suspects. Stationary ALPRs can be a vital tool in reducing crime and make a criminal think twice before targeting victims in Milpitas. So our current ALPR system, the Milpitas Department currently has 4 ALPRs that are attached to 4 police vehicles. These vehicles capture license plate data as officers drive them throughout the city, responding for calls for service and fulfilling their other responsibilities to the community. Stationary ALPRs are consistently capture license plate data at one location and have a greater impact at specific crime trend areas. It has become a common practice in many Bay Area communities for police departments to use ALPR technology to capture criminals, which impacts crime trends. How does the system work? Officers have to log on to the current ALPR system, which creates an audit trail regarding their use and their information view. As vehicles pass by an ALPR camera, officers will only receive alerts on wanted vehicles, and alerts include the GPS location, date and time of the ALPR read, an image of the license plate, image of the vehicle, and this provides the officer an opportunity to verify this plate information is correct before taking any any enforcement action. Both mobile and stationary systems provide instant notification to our personnel working and allows for immediate follow-up, which could include, again, locating a stolen vehicle, a felony vehicle, or a missing person, to name a few. The ALPR database will also offer the ability to search partial license plates and vehicle descriptions to conduct follow-up investigations and possibly identify suspects to clear cases. The ALPR database is used to help identify suspects, which will assist the police department in lowering crime rates and increasing the possibility of making arrests. The utilization of ALPR cameras has become an industry standard for law enforcement. In Santa Clara County, all 13 law enforcement agencies use either mobile or stationary ALPRs. Again, having both mobile and stationary ALPR systems will allow the officers the ability to identify more suspects while impacting quality of life issues within the city, which ultimately will make Milpitas a safer community. So recent cases that helped us with making arrests and using ALPR information. So on May 28th, 2018, there was an attempted homicide at a business on West Calaveras Boulevard. The suspect had fled prior to our arrival. Witnesses have provided 2 variations of license plates and mixed descriptions of the suspect's vehicle. Detectives searched the license plate information provided by witnesses in our ALPR database and located a recent match that confirmed the license plate information. Detectives were able to utilize that information to help identify the suspect, and they eventually took that suspect into custody later that same day. On December 6, 2019, at about 4 p.m., an unknown suspect stole a package from the front porch of a resident off of the Yosemite Drive area. The homeowner received an alert on their smart security camera and confronted the suspect as he ran back to his vehicle. The security camera captured a partial description of the vehicle. Detectives contacted the victim after he posted this incident on social media. We reached out to the victim, obtained a partial license plate and a better description of the vehicle. We searched that partial license plate in the ALPR database. We identified the suspect, and he was actually cited for the theft on December 12th. So 6 days later, we cleared that case because of the ALPR. And recently, I can't get into a lot of in-depth about this investigation, but we recently had a violent crime happen. In a privately home HOA ALPR system allowed our detectives to identify 3 violent suspects, take them into custody within 6 days of the incident. And we actually took several guns off the street as a result of the ALPR information and the work that the detectives did. So it really does impact the ability to follow up on investigations and clear cases. So the police department's plan for our stationary LPR deployment. So the city will be testing 20 stationary LPR cameras in and around high crime areas such as strip malls and major ingress egress points in the city. If the Milpitas department finds a stationary camera, LPR camera system is a valuable resource to the community and the department, then we will retain the stationary LPR system that we're testing. So as you can see, based on the pictures, we'll be looking at Landis Piedmont area, the 237 corridor, the areas around the Great Mall, and then down over near Ranch Drive and Barber Lane. So the Milpitas Police Department ALPR policy, regulation of use, privacy concerns, accountability, auditing, and data collection and retention. The Milpitas Police Department is currently evaluating its ALPR policy to include the use of stationary LPRs. Therefore, we have presented to you a draft policy and hope to get your feedback and ensure your concerns are addressed in our policy if possible. The purpose of our ALPR policy is to hold the departments accountable and provide guidance for the capture, storage, and use of ALPR data and protecting privacy rights. ALPR may be used in conjunction with any routine patrol operation, criminal investigations, canvassing areas around homicides, shootings, and other major incidents. The ALPR data may contain confidential information and sometimes an image of the occupant, and the department understands the importance of the established privacy rights of the public, and these LPRs will only be used in the public right-of-way in areas where the police have the right to be, but they will not be used for the sole purpose of monitoring individuals' activities. Additionally, in accordance with the California Values Act, ALPR data may not be used for the purpose of immigration enforcement or similar crimes. No department personnel shall access ALPR data unless authorized to do so for official investigations. The Technical Services Division captain is responsible for training, ensuring compliance to privacy laws and access, and the retention and destruction of data. We currently retain the data for 366 days and purge it, unless it becomes, or we believe it will become, evidence in a criminal or civil trial, or is subject to a discovery request or other lawful action to produce records. No member of the police department shall operate an LPR equipment or access the data without completing department training. LPR data is safeguarded and protected by both procedural and technological means, with system audits completed by the technical division captain, like I mentioned earlier, and is designed to make sure our staff adhere to our policy. The department is used to store LPR data for 5 years, but again, taking privacy concerns for community into consideration, we altered that practice and now only retain that data for a year. So this concludes my presentation on our current ALPR system and how stationary ALPRs will benefit the community. Again, I want to make sure we're addressing any concerns and collaborating with the community regarding the use of ALPR cameras, and I'll be happy to address any questions at this time.
Is there any intent to have a citizens review meeting, or are we telling people in the city about this? And if so, how?
Well, we're going to have some public community meetings scheduled. There's one scheduled for May 30th, another one scheduled for June 10th. We'll have the information out on our social media regarding the introduction of stationary LPR cameras, and invite the public and our community members to come and listen to our presentation. We'll address any concerns anybody has, and we'll take their input and keep it into consideration as we move forward and design this policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns that I could address this evening?
So once these first round of ALPR cameras are online, what is the plan or possibility of expanding the number of them throughout the city, or is this kind of the 20 that you spoke of? Is that kind of what? Is there any chance of increasing the number of ALPR cameras in the city once those are proven effective?
Well, as an agency and the city in general, we always evaluate our programs and equipment we purchase. And as we continue to move forward with this program, we'll have to evaluate. And if it's being productive, we'll have to look at possibly bringing on more cameras. And again, it's all going to be dependent on crime trends, how it's impacting crime trends, and criminal activity within the city. So I can't commit to, yeah, we'll bring in more or we won't. It'll be dependent on crime trends, how productive it is for our detectives, our officers, and how it benefits the city itself.
Okay.
It looks like you've put, or at least proposed, where the smash and grabs are going on in particular. And this looks like it's more of you're adding in the stationary ones and then shortening the retention time.
Well, we shortened the retention times several years ago. I mean, like I said, we were retaining that for 5 years. Then we got feedback from the community, some concerns about how long we're retaining that data. So we changed that to 1 year. So it's actually 366 days, 1 year, 1 day, and then we purge it unless it's required to be retained for something. We are putting several cameras in the area where a lot of the auto burglaries are happening. Again, that's to impact that particular crime trend. But we're also looking at some parts of the east side of the city where we've had some spikes in residential burglaries. So that will capture cars coming in and going from San Jose or coming from the north side of town, from Fremont. And then the 237 corridor will catch anything coming in from the west side, from Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, and the peninsula. So it will help us identify. Most of the criminal activity in Milpitas is not conducted by residents of Milpitas. They're coming from outside of the area. So having stationary ALPRs will assist us in identifying those criminals. Hopefully I answered your question, sir.
No, it's just kind of reinforcing it. Thanks.
Now, I also assume that the database that you retain for 366 days, that to go back and do a search against that history would require an actual crime having been committed by somebody that you can associate with a license plate, as opposed to just anybody saying, gee, I think I'll, would be interesting to know where Don goes in the city of Milpitas.
I don't go anywhere.
Yeah, we shouldn't be going anywhere right now. But that's correct, sir. We don't just arbitrarily go search license plates. So if you're going to access the database, you actually have to put in a case number that you're investigating, and you need information regarding a license plate, the reason, and then that tracks who's actually accessing that data, the date and time. All that information is captured. So when we do our audits, everything is kind of has a trend showing that officers are actually using the system for professional and appropriate means, and not just out there searching plates, and which I know our officers are not doing.
Okay, I didn't think that was the case, but thank you.
All right.
Any other questions I could help you with?
Now, kind of piggybacking on what Paul was talking about, as a member of the public, the ALPR database information, that wouldn't be subject to like a California Open Records or Freedom of Information Act request, or how would that work?
That could, if someone was to submit a public information request, then depending on the request and how it's framed, in conjunction with the city attorney's office, we would look at it. And if it's something that we would have to release, then we would be legally required to do so.
Okay.
So there is a potential for that, yes.
Okay.
All right, do we have any other questions for Captain Raj Mahar? If not, we're moving on to.
Sorry, I do have one more. So,
Okay, Jeff.
what's the time frame for taking the draft policy and putting it in place and making it official department policy, Captain?
So we're, again, like I said, we have a public engagement scheduled for May 30th, and then again on June 10th. And based on feedback, we'll also most likely send out a survey, and we'll consider all the information that was gathered during those engagements and see what looks viable for us to change or alter or edit. And then hopefully we'll have something formalized by middle of June, end of June. And moving forward, we're looking at starting our trial program in the month of July. So hopefully we'll have everything in place and when we start our trial of the stationary cameras.
Okay, thank you.
So this question isn't actually addressed to you, Captain, but maybe one of the council members would know. What's our turnout since we have these meetings now via webcast as opposed to in-person public meetings? What's the turnout like for webcast hosted meetings as opposed to in-person meetings? You know, because we're going to have these two public hearings on May 30th and June 10th. Is anybody going to attend?
Are you asking, and I just want to clarify the question, are you asking the actual council meeting, or are you asking for the community meeting?
Well, any of the meetings that we typically open to the public in the city of Milpitas, whether they're council meetings or, you know, commission meetings, you know, we must know how many people attend physically when there's an in-person meeting versus now that we're all using Zoom meetings and virtual meetings.
Yeah, that is a great question. And we have had already 3 contentious items on the council since we've gone into shelter in place. I would say the attendance is pretty much equal to what we would expect at a normal council meeting. It just depends on the item. I could tell you, for example, cannabis, you know, the sales tax item that came up at the special meeting last Friday, brought out the same number of people that we would have expected at the chamber. So I actually feel that the engagement has not been much of a difference from moving our council meetings into Zoom. I actually predicted it was probably going to go up a little just because the accessibility, right, of someone being in the comfort of their own home. We have found that this isn't a normal time, right? So everyone is still very moving into their own, adjusting into their own schedules. People are having to deal with a little more at home, right? And so we are very mindful of that. And so the ones we have seen, I wouldn't say a decline, but it's a little, I think what's happening is our community is getting information, what they call informational fatigue. And that's not just with the city of Milpitas, we're seeing it regionally. So
Sure.
The surveys, they're not, you know, the polling isn't coming as strong. The information, you know, isn't being clicked as much. But again, I don't think that's because of our city. I think it's regional. What I'm hearing with other elected officials, they're going through the same thing. But in terms of attendance, it's been pretty steady. It's been the same. I could tell you right now, like I said, those 2 items, the hotel was another one that brought out a big crowd. And by big, I mean at least 2 to 4 hours of public comment. So the turnout was pretty good. It was at least 100 people that came out for those couple of items that were very contentious in our city.
Yeah, those were both had pretty high visibility in the city. So
Yeah.
you would expect a good turnout there. Now, I'm just looking for some confidence factor that we think the sample space that we'll get using this kind of a format as opposed to an in-person format will really represent the community's concern and input, and you're telling me it will, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
All right, we're gonna move on to fire.
Chief, actually, if I can interrupt for just one quick moment, I want to announce that Alec Bittenkurt has joined us by phone.
Hi, Alec, or Commissioner.
Am I up? Okay.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Good evening, everybody. So we'll start with our COVID-19 update with fire. So we have been impacted significantly, although less so recently. Early in this event, March 16th to be specific, we started to have quite a few of our members exhibit symptoms, and subsequently 5 of our members tested positive. We had at one time 13 people that were quarantined in addition to the 5 that were positive, which is about 25% of our firefighting force. We ended up pulling 4 of our recruits out of the fire academy to put them online. They started through the orientation process. That was a fairly stressful time. We implemented numerous measures to reduce infections at that time, including significant decontamination of all the fire stations. I can tell you that all of those members now have come back to work, including our member that was most seriously ill. We did have one firefighter end up in the ICU on a ventilator for 9 days. It was a fairly scary time, and he came back to work last week. So really, really good news. The impact on morale was significant initially, but we implemented a number of measures to improve that and help our members feel safer while they were at work. That included significant purchases with the full support of the city management staff of additional PPE for the fire department. So we're very appreciative of that, and we've placed those in service. We issued a number of special orders, including our return to work policy. I know there was a question earlier regarding the double negative test. We chose not to pursue the 2 negative test requirement for return to duty because at the time it was difficult to even get a single test, and we're talking about mid-March for a person who was even symptomatic. So we thought that was going to be unrealistic. Now that may be different, and we may need to revisit that policy. But at the time, it was not realistic for us. We would have members that would still be out on quarantine 2 months subsequent because they weren't testing people who weren't symptomatic at all. So as far as our ability to respond to emergencies, that has never been impacted. We never had to downstaff a rig. We were able to backfill with overtime personnel for the 2 weeks that we were significantly impacted with members on quarantine or out on illness. So now we're back up to regular staffing. The 4 recruit firefighters were placed back in the academy. 2 of the firefighters have finished the academy as of about noon today, and 3 more are now making up the time they missed when we pulled them out. So we look forward to them coming online. As a reminder, those firefighters are the staffing that we hired to help us put the ambulance in service. So that takes us then on to the ambulance going in service. And I can give you a quick update on that. The ambulance is going to be placed in service. It's probably going to start on Monday with a mobile testing concept run by the fire department and the city. We've gotten a lot of cooperation from our recreation department especially, and very much appreciate that. They're helping to set appointments. They've helped us with our flyers, and that unit will be targeting vulnerable populations throughout the city, our senior housing, convalescent homes, residential care facilities and the senior mobile home parks, mostly over in District 3, over by the police department with Mobile Lodge and those places. And then in addition to that, the homeless population. And that will be those will be our initial targets. We've actually partnered up with a local lab based in Milpitas called IGenics. They're over on Gibraltar, which is kind of exciting. It's nice to have a lab in the city. So we'll test people all day, and then we'll actually drop the tests off in person that evening, so they don't have to be mailed off. The turnaround time then is quite a bit quicker. And we expect to get results, positive results, within probably 12 to 24 hours to anybody who tests positive. In addition to that, the lab supplied the fire department with 100 serum antibody tests and 100 nasal swab active virus tests for our fire department personnel. We're going to be administering those probably sometime late next week to all of our personnel. And that will be done in conjunction with the Stanford study, where they are going to test every firefighter in Santa Clara County for antibodies. And then they will compare the results between the two labs so that they can both use that data to validate their tests for the Food and Drug Administration for final approval. So we are moving forward. It was definitely tough back in March, but things have improved significantly and normalized somewhat for the fire department. Any questions on that before I move on to my next item? Okay, great. Fire Station 2 rebuild is moving ahead. The temporary station where the firefighters are going to be relocated, which is just kind of catty corner to the current station, has just about been completed. And we're looking to hopefully move our firefighters over there in the next couple of months. That project has been delayed just a little bit, mostly as a result of the shelter-in-place order. So we'll probably be able to report at the next meeting a more precise timeline for the beginnings of the station rebuild. The mobile testing I already covered. And the contact tracing program, Tony has been working with the county. We got an update from the county earlier this week. I think it was on Monday evening, regarding contact tracing. The county is training right now their own employees that might otherwise be furloughed or don't have a significant workload. And they will be completing that training, I think, this week. And then next week, they're going to reach out to the county volunteers and train county volunteers. After that, they're going to look to the cities in the county to assist with providing contact tracing. So we'll probably be able to report significantly more on that. In fact, that program will probably be up and running by the time we have our next meeting. I think that takes me to the end of my report. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
It's more of a comment. We appreciate all that you and your department do for the city to keep us safe. And it is so scary to hear of so many members of your department was infected by the virus. But I'm glad that everyone is good, safe, and back to work.
Thank you.
All right, the floor is for the commissioners. If you have any questions for him.
No questions, and I echo your thanks and relief that that we're all healthy again.
Yes.
Thank
This is Councilmember Dominguez. I just definitely want to echo and jump in and just thank the fire department. They have been very instrumental in helping our office as one member go out into our unhoused communities and really identify the needs of those who are unhoused. And so I'm deeply thankful. Milpitas is the only city that I know of that is moving the mobile sites into the unhoused populations. Those are some really hot zones, what we call. And so just know I appreciate what you guys are doing. They're just as scared as anyone else. And I'm also very thankful that, you know, our firefighters were able to come through. So thank you so much. I know you guys have been, I mean, the training you have provided me in just those short days it's still routine that I use till this day. So please know I am very thankful for your assistance.
Thank you.
I do not want to leave the police department out. Thank you. Your department, the police and the fires are the one that's always in the front line protecting us. So I know you sacrifice for our safety, and we thank you.
I appreciate the comments. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Chief Corpus as well.
And on that note, it's important to note that we've worked in very close cooperation with the police department throughout this, and including with procurement of PPE. Especially early on, I probably spoke to Lieutenant Serrano 10 times a day as we coordinated our efforts to secure PPE for our personnel, as well as on the return to duty policies and a variety of other measures that we implemented together or in cooperation with each other to keep our personnel safe, both police and fire. Much appreciated.
Well, I was actually feeling sorry for the fire department because you guys never seem to be getting all the donations of goodies and all that sort of thing. So either you guys weren't getting it, or the police department was doing a better job of utilizing social media to promote that.
That's okay, Raj. What we were doing is we were letting you collect all that stuff for us. And now that I have unescorted access to the police department, I just come in and take what I need when I need it.
We try to share as much as we can. Again, we appreciate everybody that is donated PPE equipment, food, and goodies to our staff. They are here working 24 hours a day and responding to community needs. So we appreciate it, and that means a lot to us when the community comes knocking on the door with some goodies for us.
Yeah. No,
so far, there's been no donuts though, which is a good thing.
Great. Well, thank you so much. All right, let's go on to the ongoing items. We have our work plan for 2020. We'll start with the Map Your Neighborhood. Commissioners. That's Commissioner Young and Clenadin.
Yeah, we haven't done much lately for obvious reasons. Now, I do have a little bit of input because you'll get down to it later a little bit. We've from the time we started, it's been a few years, we've had 14 meetings, I think, right around there anyway. And at the same time, the last ones we had, which were over at the Sierra Terra Luna, which is 3 buildings, we were getting some traction, and this kind of goes into some of the other the Neighbor Fest stuff, that these people got it, all right? Whereas a lot of the other ones are going, okay, we'll kind of go along with this thing. But that group says, we got it. You've got a combination of homeowners and renters in those buildings. And they're saying, how come their renters aren't here as well? And that was the management's thing. Then they're looking at, where do we shelter at if we can't stay in the building? Do we want to be down at ground level, not up there in, 3rd, 4th, 5th floors or something like that? And So they were thinking through the process. And that was one thing, is like, okay, we finally found somebody that gets it. And that was, kind of a real, wow, this thing does sort of work at times. But other than that, that's kind of what, between me and Vicky have been doing.
Thank you. Thank you both. I know that since our last meeting in January, and then shelter in place started March 16, we haven't talked. We haven't really sit down or having any meetings. So not much done during those few months. And we don't know when life is back to normal, but let's pray and hope for that normal life back faster and safer soon. So do we have any reportings on Milpitas business community emergency preparedness from, oh, Donald, that's you again.
Yeah, I haven't done anything as of late. I know John was kind of putting some things together, and we haven't had a chance to really get out and talk with businesses or make a plan to, how do we approach the businesses. I know that one is you would go to something like the Lions Club or something like that, or similar type organizations where you can at least talk with those people as to what their business plans are. And I think now this whole COVID incident, I think has got businesses to thinking, how do I get through something like this the next time? So this is kind of one of those, it's like an earthquake that's a small enough one that gets people to start thinking of being prepared. I think this is now a nice trigger that my business is shut down. I can't do anything. What am I, for my survival and my employees, so I think this is a good wake up call. And I just got an email from, it was something on how's your business, backup plan basically. And it's like, it's a little late for that. So, and I know Tim got it too, just in the last couple of days here. So it was kind of a,
Well, it's a learning process for all of us. No one was prepared for this shelter in place. First, we didn't even know that it's going to be this long. It changed several times and extending further out. So I think the good news was it's going to be reopened next week, someday, I think. I missed the meeting yesterday, but I heard that it's going to ease up a little.
Hey, before we leave this topic, I think we need to think about the metrics that we're going to use to define our success. And that's really what was behind this, because over the last 18 months, it's not just, what's happened since March 16th, but over the last 18 months, we've delivered X number of presentations to various communities. And we haven't, and this isn't a criticism of anybody, it's something that we need to think about, I think, as a commission. When we do things, we need to be able to measure their impact so that we can come back and say, we gave this presentation to 18 organizations and 4 of them have implemented it. So we know if the things that we're doing are moving the needle or not. And, I think as a commission, we need to keep that in mind with everything that we do. So some of the data points that I think we'd like to start out with are historical data points that already exist, that, we don't have to do anything new except document what we've already done.
Agree.
And real fast, also kind of since we're on the topic, I had spoke to Tony about this after Tony and John about this after the last meeting. But there are some resources for people who are looking to put a disaster preparedness plan for their businesses in place, from Cal OES, FEMA, Small Business Administration, and that we should figure out a way to bring that into the discussion. That way, if somebody says, "Well, I don't even know how to do this," we can say, "Hey, here's some resources from the state and federal government to kind of point you in the right direction and kind of get you going, at least, so you can start down that road to get your disaster preparedness plan moving forward." So Dawn, I have your email. I'll get those to you. I think I had already sent them to John, but I'll send them out to you, Dawn, Tony. I think I'll send them to you again, and I'll send them out to John. That way we can kind of be on the same page as to what resources are available for the local business community, in terms of having kind of an outline of what to do, sort of thing.
Can I add something? Hello?
Sure.
Yes.
I also want to add, actually, if not because of the pandemic, and we were going to have some follow-up meetings with the department, because usually in our past experience, it was very hard to find a person to be a lead. That particular day, several of them were interested to be a lead. So I was going to follow up with them, the meetings, but then it never happened because, that's, so hopefully if we can open everything, reopen, I will try to talk to them again. So like, I think I agree with Paul that Commissioner Ellis, that we should have, once we start, we should have follow-up meetings with them, because otherwise the knowledge they learn, it will fade out. They kind of forget about it. Okay. That's my comment.
Yeah. And to kind of add to what you were saying there, Joe, I've got some flyers and stuff like that, which are informative on, business related, preparedness and things like that too, as I collected them over the last few years.
Okay. Okay, maybe at some point here, maybe before the next meeting, we can get on maybe here on Zoom and kind of look out over what you have, what I have, get John in on that, and kind of bring all our collective knowledge together for that.
Yeah.
All right, great. Then I would assume that there will be nothing to report on NeighborFest and Pumpkins in the Park. I haven't done anything to plan or discuss with Commissioner Ellis and Habana on the subject.
On the NeighborFest, we did have Daniel Holmesy in at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
And listen to him talk and things like that. And
right.
Understanding kind of what his approach to the whole thing is. It's kind of a soft parallel between Nap Your Neighborhood and his, where we go out and kind of more of, here's the information, and now they have to do something with it. Whereas he turns it around to say, what are you going to do if? How are you going to help them? And that sort of thing. So his is kind of a, similar but opposite in his approach, where it's making them the owner of it, as opposed to we're the owner of this thing and they don't like to do it, kind of thing. So that's kind of what the neighborhood, the NeighborFest thing was. Now they will supply them with a set of supplies so that they have some starting point. But other than that, it's up to them to, like they need a generator to recharge her oxygen, or something like that kind of thing. That's up to them to supply that stuff.
Yeah. All right, should we move on to future items? Tony, would you help me out here? I don't know when we're gonna reopen. And so my updates for MUSD school and end of the school year, all the events are canceled at this point.
Yeah, I don't have any further information on that, any of that either. Yeah, everything's kind of put on hold and we'll just see how it goes. The one question I would probably ask right now, maybe Councilmember Dominguez or Assistant City Manager Contact might have information. Has there been discussion on National Night Out? I think that's probably our biggest upcoming event in front of us, and I don't know what we look at this point.
There's a new date for it,
October.
October 6th.
Oh, fantastic. I hadn't heard that.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on the National Night Out for my day job. I'm one of the leads for SJPD. So the local regional law enforcement agencies have decided to move with October 6th. And then again, that's still kind of up in the air, right? It just depends on the SIP and how the different phases work. But I'll definitely... what I'll do is I'll go ahead and write myself a little note, Tony, just so that way if I get any updates from work, I could just give them to you as well. Because I know we've been working very closely. Our crime prevention unit in San Jose has been working really closely with the Milpitas Police Department. So thank you so much. If you could please thank staff for that. We really appreciate the partnerships that we have developed with Fremont, Newark, and Milpitas. So it's been working out pretty well. So I'll make sure to include you in any information that pops up.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think at this point in time, we're kind of just in a holding pattern position with everything going forward. So I will just keep folks updated as things come through the office once things change.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm glad that we decided to have this meeting today just to catch up, just to get updates and reports from the police department and the fire department. So with no further discussion on the future items, unless we have any other comments or set up on our next virtual meeting. It is set up on September 17, 2020 at 7 p.m. Do we have any announcements or comments before we adjourn this meeting?
So real fast, Han. So with the other two events in October that were originally scheduled in October, Home Depot Kids Day and the Pumpkins in the Park, is it safe to assume until further notice those are kind of postponed until we hear differently, or?
Until we hear from Tony, and Tony will get some sort of direction from Assistant City Manager or Council Member Karina.
Yeah, Home Depot has not announced their Home Depot Kids Day event. So it's an event that I work with Home Depot on every year, and it's always the first Saturday in October because that's Fire Safety Month. Right. So I've got it on the calendar just as a placeholder for us, but it doesn't mean it's going off at this point.
Okay. And
Pumpkins in the Park is a recreation event. I don't, ACM Contact, if you wouldn't mind speaking to that. I don't know if we've canceled events that far out or if we're just kind of waiting at this point in time, I would imagine.
We have not canceled it. We are putting together a plan, actually kind of tying it to the different levels that we anticipate, but it will be dependent on so many other external factors. So it's hard to predict if it's too far out right now. So we haven't officially canceled it. We'll be bringing a plan to council for all of the events.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just kind of one thought here on this. I mean, look at these different events, and part of it's going to be how well we keep, the social distancing and mask wearing and things like that, and how the numbers go from here as to whether some of these things will open up in a modified way. And I think that's kind of the thing that we're really saying here is depending on, like National Night Out, well, I don't, what I've seen on some of the things is if you're going to have a party, you social distance, and if you're going to supply food, it's in a single-use package type of thing. So there's some things out there that say, okay, if you're going to do something like this, here's a process to do things like that, such that everybody feels comfortable about it. It's not bringing food, a casserole to share with everybody. It's single-use type, items, like a bag of chips or things like that, or a can of Coke or whatever, such that they don't feel uncomfortable in sharing and things like that. So I think that's some of the new thinking from at least this point on. On another note too is we've now got a little more fuel to the fire to talk about preparedness, because we got PSPS coming up here, as well as the aftermath of the COVID, okay, and being prepared going forward. So that's something that, how do we market that out there to the public in one sense? So that's just a couple of, thoughts anyway.
Thank you, Donna. Well, at this point, I think we just wait until maybe July and see if anything changes. And we'll go from there.
Okay, if that's it, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So second,
There's a second.
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Seeing none,
Aye.
meeting adjourned.
Thank you all for joining.
Please be safe, and
It
we'll
was so,
see you soon.
so nice to see everybody. Take care.
So long. Thanks,
Don't be so
everyone.
distant.
Yes, social distancing.
No, but don't be so distant, It's,
No, call me, email me. I miss people.
I know, I miss seeing you guys.
I miss everybody. You guys, seriously, if you need anything, I'm a phone call away. So thank you guys again for your service. Bringing our eyes and our ears. We're all working overtime, I think, and I can